For Power and Borders, I looked at a talk on mapping the future of countries. This really caught my attention as it's over the whole issue of territorial integrity and Mali, etc. The first question to think about is, are we a bordered world or a world of connected and unconnected spaces? So on the left, you can see the 200 countries of the world, and you'd call that a bordered world. And then on the right, you look at connected and unconnected spaces. So this also relates a lot to Miss Burton's side of the course and globalization, because of course, time-space compression, friction of distance, global marketplace. Do we now have clone towns, especially with the concept of TNCs? So the topics raised in the video was, of course, do we live in a borderless world? So a concept of a world with borders versus a concept of connected spaces and unconnected spaces, as I mentioned before. It dwelled on the whole concept of political geography and the fact that 90% of people never leave the place that they were born, which is a very high statistic considering all the migration that we study. It said border conflicts are very prominent and they require military and industrial complex. And it also said how countries have military generally for border conflicts, which I found very interesting. So that completely undermines the concept of a borderless program. It also raised the question of, what does it mean to be a sovereign independent state? Is it someone's gain for someone else's loss? It also raised migration. So it said Russia's population is shrinking towards 120 million people. Oh, typo. So that's an argument for a connected world. And then also it looked at, are the world's borders constantly changing? So as I mentioned before, globalization resulting in time-space compression, reduction and friction of distance, global marketplace, clone towns. So this undermines the whole concept of political geography, as it says we're all very similar. It also looked at what role does diplomacy play, so such as non-aggression pacts coupled with vowing to a country's defence. So if you look at World War I and World War II, how it suddenly turned into a world war because other countries had vowed to defend. It also looked at demographics, so how credible is it when China exports business people, nannies, students and teachers to teach in other countries? So this is economic migration, in essence, so job opportunities. But of course, they are Chinese people now in different countries. That's an argument for a connected world. It also looked at border conflicts such as Palestine and Israel, so where national cultures is an imperial zone as opposed to being like a conflict. It discussed the borders left behind by European colonialists and how that resulted in violence. What I found very interesting was when it mentioned oil in Iraq. So oil had previously held Iraq together. However, the Kurds, a really big sort of ethnic group, wanted to manipulate the oil. So basically they want independence, and their way they believe to get independence is through the oil. And they want control of the pipelines of oil, because that they believe that they'll be able to set their own terms of statehood. So therefore, oil is now dividing Iraq. So can potentially oil here be used to give autonomy, which is a whole another aspect. Furthermore, the European Union demonstrates how borders have been brought down. So the EU, of course, is a currency bloc and a trading bloc. But what does that mean for the whole concept of a borderless world? And ultimately, insurgency continues, especially with Pakistan. So, of course, it's got a very strong course content linked to Mali, our case study. So its borders were drawn several times by France, but officially finalised in 1891. As we know, as you can see in the diagram bottom right, there are a lot of ethnic groups in Mali. So there was a lot of conflict caused. So France is very concerned with the territorial integrity of Mali, even at present day, but they are abusing it really. And MINUSMA are turning a blind eye on it, as we know about them because we studied them. So the issue here are the ethnic groups who are feeling restricted and defined by their borders. So therefore they are considered a borderless world. But why are we rethinking Mali's borders even to present day now if we would say we're a connected world? But basically the conclusion of this talk was there was no conclusion. There are no answers. It just raises a whole host of problems. And it's all down to how people subjectively perceive the world to be. But as you can see in Mali, people use the borders to define them. Yeah.